Solomon was the wealthiest man in the ancient world. He did not pray for money. He asked for one thing, and wealth followed as the consequence. I am the millionaire priest, and I have spent 20 years documenting what Solomon knew. 2 books. The Confession Code. The 7 financial sins no priest will name from the pulpit, and the priest's ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives. One for where you are, one for where you are going. Both available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment below. There is a ritual that the covenant people of God performed every year at this specific point in the calendar. A ritual that most modern Christians have never heard of, that almost no church observes, and that the biblical text describes with enough specificity and enough financial consequence that its disappearance from the spiritual practice of believers may be one of the most costly liturgical losses of the last 2,000 years. It is not a minor practice. It is not a peripheral tradition. It is a ritual connected directly to the midpoint of the agricultural and spiritual year, the pivot point between the first half of the year's harvest and the second half, between what the year has produced so far and what the year still has the capacity to produce, and the specific financial consequences described in connection with this ritual, the financial movement that the biblical text says it releases. Make it the most practically important thing you can do in July to position your household for the financial breakthrough. The second half of this year still has the capacity to deliver. Today, I am giving you this ritual in full, its biblical origin, its specific financial mechanism, its 4 components, and the precise way to perform it this month, this week if possible, before the window of July narrows and the specific opportunity this calendar point represents has passed. Welcome. I am the millionaire priest, and today I am giving you the biblical ritual of the mid-year covenant renewal and the 4 financial practices it activates. Let me begin with the calendar itself, because the timing is the theology. The Hebrew year has 2 major pivot points, 2 moments when the entire covenant community was called to stop, assess, realign, and reconsecrate before continuing into the next phase of the year. The first pivot is at Passover, in the spring, the beginning of the covenant year, the moment of new beginnings, the time when the first fruits of the barley harvest were offered as the declaration that the year belonged to God from its first moment. We have discussed this extensively in previous teachings. The second pivot, the one almost nobody teaches about, is at the midpoint of the summer, in the period corresponding to what we call July. This is the point in the agricultural calendar when the grain harvest has been substantially completed. The early summer fruits, the grapes and figs and pomegranates, are beginning to ripen, and the question for every household in ancient Israel was the same question it should be for your household right now. What did the first half of the year produce? And what does the second half of the year still hold? The midpoint is the assessment point, the recalibration point, the moment when the covenant was renewed in the context of what the year had actually produced, rather than what had been hoped for at its beginning. And the specific ritual attached to this midpoint, the ritual I'm about to give you, is the practice of bringing the mid-year harvest before God in a specific, deliberate, 4-component act of financial covenant renewal. Before I give you the 4 components, I want to pause here because the ritual I am about to describe requires a clear conscience to perform at its full power, and the conditions that prevent it from operating at full power are exactly the conditions I document in the Confession Code. The 7 financial sins. No priest will name from the pulpit. The mid-year covenant renewal is most powerful when it is performed by a household that has honestly examined and addressed the financial sins that the first half of the year may have allowed to accumulate. The inverted giving order, the unresolved financial obligations, the closed hand, the accepted negative word. Each of these, as I describe in the Confession Code, narrows the channel through which the mid-year ritual releases its financial movement. The confession code is available right now through the link in the description and the pinned comment. I also have a second book, The Priest's Ledger, which I will return to before this teaching ends. Both are there for you. And now, the 4 components of the ritual. The first component is the mid-year financial audit, the honest, written, specific accounting of what the first half of the year produced. Proverbs 27:23. Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. The audit is not a passive review. It is an active, deliberate, unhurried reckoning with the specific financial reality of the year so far. What income arrived? What was spent? What was given? What was saved? Where did the provision come from and where did it go? Where were the devourer months, the months where the money arrived and disappeared before it could accumulate? Where were the multiplication months, the months where something unexpected opened? The wealthiest man in the ancient world. He did not pray for money. He asked for one thing, and wealth followed as the consequence. I am the millionaire priest, and I have spent 20 years documenting what Solomon knew. 2 books. The Confession Code. The 7 financial sins no priest will name from the pulpit, and the priest's ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives. One for where you are, one for where you are going. Both available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment below. The mid-year audit produces 2 things that no amount of prayer without it can produce: clarity about what actually happened in the first 6 months, and the specific diagnostic information needed to make the second 6 months different. Nehemiah, the great builder, the man who organized one of the most significant construction projects in the Old Testament, surveyed the broken walls of Jerusalem before he began to rebuild them. He went out at night, and he looked, and he assessed. He saw the extent of the damage before he made a plan. The mid-year financial audit is your Nehemiah survey. You cannot rebuild what you have not honestly assessed. Perform the audit this week. Every number, every category, the full picture of the first half of the year, written on paper, looked at directly, without the vagueness that comfortable avoidance provides. The second component is the mid-year first fruits offering, a specific, intentional, above-the-ordinary financial offering given to God at the midpoint of the year, as a covenant declaration that the second half of the year belongs to him from its first moment. Nehemiah 10:35 records the covenant commitment of the returning community. We will bring the first fruits of our crops and of every fruit tree each year to the house of the Lord. The annual first fruits offering was not only a spring practice. The summer first fruits, the Bikurim, the first of the summer harvest, were brought to the temple in a specific festival known as Shavuot, which we have discussed as the Feast of First Fruits that corresponds to the Pentecost season. But the mid-year offering I am describing now is the household extension of that covenant practice, the specific, deliberate act of offering the first of what the second half of the year is about to produce before it has arrived, as a declaration of trust in the God who fills the barns of those who honor him with the reshit. This offering should be specific, not the comfortable tithe already in the regular flow, a specific, additional, above-ordinary offering that represents the deliberate consecration of the second half of the year to the God who owns it. And it should be given now, at the midpoint, as the first fruits of the harvest that is still coming. The barn does not fill before the offering. The offering precedes the filling. Give the mid-year first fruits this week. The third component is the mid-year course correction declaration, the specific, written, spoken revision of the financial vision for the second half of the year, based on what the audit revealed and what the offering consecrated. Jeremiah 18:1-4. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord: Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you my message. So I went down to the potter's house, and I saw him working at the wheel. But the pot he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands. So the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. The potter does not discard the clay when the pot is marred. He reshapes it. The mid-year course correction is the potter's reshaping, the honest recognition of where the first half of the year produced a marred vessel, and the specific revision of the financial vision, the financial habits, and the financial priorities for the second half that the reshaping requires. This is not the same as writing a New Year's resolution. It is the covenant act of bringing the specific marring of the first 6 months before the potter, the specific financial failures, the specific habits that produced the wrong shape, the specific priorities that were inverted, and allowing him to reshape the remaining clay of the year according to his design, rather than the design that the first half defaulted to. Write the course correction. Speak it out loud as a declaration. Name specifically what changes in the second half, and place that written declaration alongside the written vision from the Habakkuk practice we covered in the teaching on writing your financial goal under your Bible. The fourth component is the 40-day financial commitment, the specific practice of identifying one financial discipline, one financial obedience, or one financial habit and committing to it without interruption for 40 consecutive days, beginning in July. 40 days is the biblical period of transformation. Moses on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights receiving the law. Elijah's 40-day journey to Mount Horeb. Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. David facing Goliath after the Philistine presented himself for 40 days. 40 is the number of the period long enough to produce genuine transformation rather than temporary adjustment, long enough to break the old pattern and establish the new one in its place. The 40-day financial commitment, beginning in July, runs through August, through the entire second half of the summer and into the beginning of the fall harvest season, and the specific transformation that 40 days of consistent financial obedience produces, in habit, in identity, in the quality of the financial decisions made from the person who has sustained 40 days of discipline, is the transformation that positions the household to receive the second half harvest that the mid-year ritual consecrated. Choose one practice. The daily reshit offering. The morning 5-step Kabbalistic practice. The consistent tithe from the genuine first fruits rather than the remainder. The daily Ketoret prayer. Whatever the specific financial obedience is that you know you have been intermittent about, make the 40-day commitment to it, beginning now, and do not break it, because the 40-day practice is only transformative if it is completed. The breaking of the 40-day commitment resets the transformation counter, and the 40 days that follow an unbroken period are not the same 40 days that precede it. I want to give you the complete July ritual as a single sequence, because all 4 components belong together and their power compounds when they are performed in sequence rather than in isolation. This week, ideally before the end of July, perform the 4 components in order. Day 1. The mid-year financial audit. Set aside 2 hours every number of the first 6 months, written on paper, looked at directly, the honest, unhurried assessment of what the first half actually produced. Day 2. The mid-year first fruits offering, a specific, above-ordinary, second-half consecrating financial gift, given before the second half of the year begins to produce, given as the first fruits of the harvest that is still coming. Day 3. The mid-year course correction declaration, written, spoken, the specific revision of the financial vision, habits, and priorities for the second half, named directly, placed alongside the written financial vision. Day 4. The 40-day financial commitment, one practice, one obedience, 40 consecutive days, beginning today, not ending until the 40 are complete. I want to come back now to the priest's ledger, the 40-year method for reading wealth before it arrives. Because the mid-year ritual I have just described is one of the annual practices that the priest's ledger builds into the 40-year framework. the specific recalibration point that, performed every July without exception across 40 years, produces a compounding financial effect that the person who performs it once and then forgets about never experiences. The ritual is powerful performed once. It is transformative performed every year. And it is the 40-year arc of its consistent performance. The 40 annual mid-year audits, the 40 mid-year offerings, the 40 mid-year course corrections, the 40 40-day commitments, that the priest's ledger is designed to help you build. The priest's ledger is available now through the link in the description and the pinned comment, alongside the confession code. Both are there for you. I want to close with this. July is not a neutral month in the covenant calendar. It is the midpoint, the pivot, the moment when what the year has already produced meets what the year still has the capacity to produce, and when the covenant practice of the mid-year renewal determines which of those two possibilities the second half will most resemble. The household that performs this ritual, that audits honestly, offers specifically, corrects deliberately, and commits for 40 days, is the household that enters the second half of the year with the spiritual and financial alignment that the first half may have allowed to drift. And the financial miracles of the second half belong to the households that prepared for them at the midpoint, not to the households that waited for the end of the year to assess what had been lost. Leave a comment below. Tell me which of the 4 components you are performing first. Tell me what the mid-year audit revealed. Tell me what your 40-day commitment is. This community is built on honest conversations, and I read everyone. If you are new here, welcome to the Millionaire Priest. Subscribe and hit the bell. Every week we go this deep at the place where faith and finances meet, and there is much more coming. Audit, offer, correct, commit. The second half of the year still holds what the first half did not deliver. The ritual opens it, and the window is this month. Amen.